first of all, you have 2 minutes to pitch your game. We're going to keep that very clear and very simple. As soon as you start speaking, or if you are submitting anything pre-recorded, make sure that it is at the 2-minute mark, just so that we can compile everything together and make sure everything runs smoothly within the allocated time we have in the lab. So, first of all, pitching. It requires public speaking for the most part, and in my experience teaching here, most of you hate public speaking. Well, tough. You're going to have to get used to it, especially if you want to sell your concepts.
Recording
in this industry, you're going to have to
pitch your concepts to publishers, and publishers want to know that you know what you're talking about. So, what we're going to do in going through this, and you're going to have to practice this obviously, and you'll get better as time goes on. You can't run away from public speaking all the time because it is a part of your job. Again, communication both in game design and written format, and eventually you'll have to be able to say it in person. So, a couple important things to take note of. Excuse me. One, you have to be a salesman. Most of you aren't naturally salesmen in my experience, because creative people tend to be quiet and want to go away and do their work. Well, games have to sell. For the most part, art, animation, film, whatever you're working in has to sell, and you have to convince people that it can sell and why it can sell. Therefore, you need to be confident in your product, and you need to know your product. Selling ideas may not be your strong suit, but it's going to have to be. Like I've said, whether it is written, designed, or oral, communication is the key here as a game designer. You need to be able to convince your audience. In saying that, you need to know and understand your audience. You need to see what they want and what they need, and how you're going to get them attracted to whatever it is that you have on offer. What do they specialize in? What do they go for? So if you're appealing to, let's say, the RPG audience, which is a large field, are you looking at, you know, the grindy nature of it, the metagame, or are you trying to go into the story elements? Pitch what you think is strongest and what is going to attract them. Now, there is a difference between pitching to your publishers versus pitching to your target audience, and in this case pitching to your peers, where you're more closer to pitching to other developers. You need to understand what's going to sell to them. Publishers are very distinct from your target audience. Target audience, you give them for the most part what they want. A publisher, you need to give them confidence that you know what you're doing. Okay. Here is something a lot of students do not do, or at least they don't exude the confidence that they should have, which is knowing their product. When you get up here, in the 2 minutes that you have, you need to communicate to us that you know every facet of your product inside and out. The more you know about it, the more confident a publisher will be in it. Even with regards to areas outside of your expertise, you should know your game in and out, and specifically you should know how your game is going to get from beginning to end. In the event that you fail to know any part of your concept, that doesn't inspire confidence, and you're going to lose traction with whoever you're trying to convince to let you build your game. Why should someone back you if they don't know, or if you don't know, the ins and outs of your concept? A good way also to practice this, let me minimize this so I can see my notes. The elevator pitch. We have talked about the elevator pitch kind of in passing over the last couple of weeks. In knowing your concept, you should be able to condense it down into a shortened version. In a short amount of time, can you communicate and convince others of your project? Whether it's in a sentence, whether it's in 2 sentences. And again, there are ways to communicate. If you know your audience and you know your publisher, you can use other games, you can use tropes, you can use themes, you can use art styles and aesthetics, things that people will relate to and things that people will understand. So, as far as this 2-minute pitch goes, it needs to be short, it needs to be memorable, it needs to fire up the imagination and make people want more. And the most common format for this is, my game is, I don't know, Zelda meets Street Fighter in a post-apocalyptic world, something like that. That is a very easy format to do it. X meets Y and Z. And as I've just said before, leave them wanting more. Now, obviously with this pitch, we only have the 2 minutes. With this pitch, we're only giving you the 2 minutes. However, outside of scenarios like these, if you are approaching a publisher, or anyone else who wants to back your work, or if you're trying to bring on developers, there are different things that you can show. Now, obviously, the strongest footing you could potentially have is some sort of interactive gameplay prototype. If you go to a publisher with a prototype, it shows that A, you already have this, the skills and the tools needed to build, you just need the time and the resources. If you are pitching a prototype, it needs to show the game's mechanics. It cannot simply be a character walking around in a very pretty world, because that doesn't communicate the game at all. So, as I've said, this is not an art course, and if you're trying to submit to a publisher, you can't just be showing art, you can't just be showing very pretty things, you need to actually show the concept. How is it going to play? Second to that, in the event that your interactive prototype may break down in front of whoever you're presenting to, a video presentation of gameplay is just as strong, as long as it shows that the gameplay is there, it is concrete, and it is working. If you aren't at that stage yet, art is a trailer. Again, I'm kind of contradicting myself, but to be very blunt, art sells. There is a reason the first kind of trailer you see for a lot of games is usually a cinematic trailer, because it builds hype and interest, gets people on board very quickly. And then outside of that, if you have the, let's say, gift of the gab, a traditional presentation. You can stand before them, go through some slides, and convince them with your charisma, hopefully. Another thing to cover off, and we talked about this last week with the USP, the unique selling points. What are the hooks of the game? What kind of tagline features can you draw people in with? Is there a huge open world with, you know, hundreds of areas to explore? Is it a quiet, sensitive, introspective platformer? There are a lot of those, and they do sell. Maybe that's the audience you're trying to appeal to. Or you could go for something a bit more outlandish. Do you have chainsaws as arms and legs? Are there physics-based puzzles? Is there emergent and evolving gameplay? Use these things effectively to, I guess, hook people in. So, essentially, that's what I've just covered. What we're going to have a look at now are some 10 to 20 second indie pitches. I've probably shown you this video before, but again, and not all of these are good. Some of them aren't great, some of them are really good. A lot of these have demos, meaning they can easily show them in that format, but these are essentially condensed elevator pitches. Let's see if we crash the Mac running this.
It is an empire management game and a beat 'em up, and the two are interconnected. So you control the empire by getting in there and knocking heads around.
It is called Secrets of Reticon and is an open-world, explorative, single-player game about the dream of flight.
So our game is a music action puzzler. This means that the environment generates the music and you're interacting with it.
Pitch us your game. Okay, Runner 2 is a 2D platformer with awesome level design, crazy characters, and a drunk pickle. Boom.
It's a first-person puzzle platformer set on the side of an infinite wall, and you're exploring the civilization that used to live on this wall.
Contrast is a puzzle platformer. You play the imaginary friend of a little girl, and you can become your shadow.
Sure, it's a repopulation. We're a sandbox MMO featuring player-driven credit content where players can do whatever they want in the game.
Even the Ocean is an adventure platformer that focuses on a shifting energy bar that affects the physics of the player as you explore the areas.
This game is about a planet. You have 4 giants, and you try to create a utopia for mankind, and they always work against you.
It's a 2D action RPG with randomized elements and a physics system behind it.
Okay, we have a 16-bit style JRPG coming to the PS3 and PS Vita September 10th. No random battles, everything's like Chrono Trigger, and it's awesome.
An old-school Twilight Zone-style science fiction story about a mission to an Earth-like planet, but you get there, and humans have already been there.
Okay, Papers, Please is a game about playing an immigration inspector on a communist border checkpoint.
This is Apotheon. It's a 2D action RPG set in ancient Greece using ancient Greek pottery as an art aesthetic.
Loadout is all about making your own weapon, inventing from scratch billions of combinations, and you blow up people in wild and wonderful ways.
This is our game Foul Play. It is a side-scrolling brawler set entirely within a Victorian vaudevillian theatre. You don't have a life bar, but you do have an audience. You've got to be flashy.
It's a rhythm game where you bang a drum to control a tribe of monkeys while a rival tribe invades to steal your bananas.
If you love the first game, Hotline Miami, you will love this one. It's more of everything, where has all the ideas that we wanted to give you, so more of everything.
Octodad, father, octopus, family, don't know who he is, physics, crazy, fun, absurdity.
Okay. So again, communication is the key, and that's probably something I'm going to harp on for the rest of the semester. Now, here are 2 useful things in the future for those of you who do want to push further into developing your own games, and these are things specifically aimed at publishers. I've mentioned them already, but in the event that you find yourself before a publisher and you have a great demo and you have a great GDD, there are 2 things that you should definitely consider and at least show them that you've got an understanding of. One is budget. Why should they give you money if you don't actually know how much the game's going to cost or how much you're going to be doing with it? Something to remember when discussing your budget, especially with publishers: don't try and do it skint. Don't try and say we can make it for only this much amount of money. Be very realistic and say we need to employ this many people, pay them for this amount over this period of time, and that's how much it's going to take to get the game from beginning to completion. Be very clear with that. Again, you don't have to have this down to every cent, especially at the pitching stage, but you need to demonstrate that you have an understanding of how much this is going to cost to make. And again, I've already touched on it, but a timeline. What are the stages of development? At what point are you going to be in alpha, beta, and then, near release, near publication? Again, at the pitching stage, this doesn't have to be down to the minute detail, but it needs to be very clear that you have an understanding of how long it's going to take, what tasks are going to be completed, when and by whom, and again, how you're going to get from 0 to completion. Now, what should not be in your pitch content? For the most part, it's detail. We do not need, and especially in a 2-minute time period that you have next Wednesday, we do not need deep systems explanations, and this also applies to pitching to publishers. We do not need how your AI systems are going to be innovative and work. We know there's going to be enemies. Cool, that's all we need to cover. We don't need explanation of your inventory systems. We do not need any discussions of shaders. And especially for students, we do not need to hear about your lore, your plot, or the character personalities and backstories. The amount of students that come up here and say, you play as Jeff, and Jeff is the forgotten prince of John, and John was the something of something, and something and something, and then 90 seconds goes by and we still don't know what the game is. Be very clear on that. We need to know how the game plays and why people will want to play it. Put it simply, if it's not needed to communicate the basic concept, then it is not needed at all. Focus on those key selling points. Don't read out intricacy or detail. Details will bore your audience. For the most part, you can only keep an audience engaged for about half an hour unless you're very good, like a comedian. So get things across quickly. Here's another thing, and this actually applies to all kinds of things in life: practice. No, Billy, no. Practice your pitches. Make sure you know your content. Get the content down, commit it to memory. If you need to, have cue cards. If you're confident in public speaking, then be confident in it, but make sure you know the content. If you are using cue cards, you're not reading directly from them, so don't write out an entire speech on them. They are to inform you of where you are at in the pitch. Now, as I've said, students in this course are not known for their public speaking, and a lot of people hate public speaking, but it is an important skill to have, especially in this industry, especially in any kind of creative industry where you need to sell your ideas. Now, I suppose you can teach public speaking. There are courses for it, and this isn't necessarily the place to do it, but being that we're in game design, it is something that you're going to need. I suppose it is required in high school. If you do English, you have to do one speech a year or so. That's not necessarily the same thing as practicing it, and it's only once a year. So, as we have said over the past few weeks, game designers need to communicate, and this is one part of communication. This is encouraged to everyone, and as I've talked about with reaching out to publishers and things like that, I highly recommend that you practice your public speaking and even just speaking to people in general. You need to be approachable, but also get your ideas across clearly. And like I said, this is not just for the game design industry. For some of you who are more design emphasis, with a stronger design emphasis, maybe art, film, animation, whatever it may be, whatever career you're aiming for, chances are there is going to be some form of public speaking that will be crucial into getting you over the line, so to speak. So practice your stuff. Now, as for actual presenting, what is the worst that can happen? People get nervous about nothing, public speaking. It's very unlikely this will happen, and this was staged. This was set up to be the worst possible outcome. So a lot of people hate public speaking because they're terrified of standing up in front of people and actually having to talk. Don't worry about it. The worst that can happen, I don't know, you give a bad speech and you don't get your game funded. That's fine. The world doesn't end. Keep spinning. What's the best that can happen? Well, you get your game approved and you're off and riding into the sunset with your team behind you and you can make your games. With that said, if you plan to pitch anything, if you have ideas that you want people to join in, you need to get good at this. Engage with your audience, look at them, speak to them, use your hands. A lot of things can make a big difference. Volume, posture, humor, things that will keep people engaged. The amount of students that come up here, grab the mic and go like this, my game is something, something, something. Thank you for listening to my pitch, and then walk off. No one's going to remember that. Lastly, and again, this follows on from my point, have enthusiasm for your concept. Show up with some morale. Know your idea. Get up there and really sell it. Don't stand up here and read a sheet or stare at your phone, look at the screen. Do your stuff, then ride off into the sunset like I said before. You need to engage the audience. And the way that you need to engage the audience through your game, you need to engage them through the pitch. So, let's specifically cover what you need to carry into the session. Your game, what is it? Tell us the title and tell us your name. The amount of students that come up here and say, my game is a something something platformer, it's going to have these elements and those elements, and then they walk off. And then I have to put their name and the title of the game into the video presentation. Genre, communicate the genre. Someone in your audience may not be familiar with the genre, but at least it connects with those who do know the genre that you are talking about. A general premise. Give us a basic outline. Not the plot, not the lore, not the characters, and especially not the relationships or deeper meanings at this stage, unless your game is one that is more narratively driven and you need some of those details to get that idea across. Again, USPs, unique selling points. What is unique about your game? Why should people play it? What's the fun? Where is the fun? How is it fun? And very, very crucially, because a lot of students, even their second time around, fail to do this, what does the player actually do? In the moment-to-moment gameplay, what am I as a player going to be doing in your game? Am I going to be swinging a sword around and fighting, I don't know, orcs, stuff like that? Am I going to be driving a car around delivering pizzas? It can be very clear and very simple. Again, describe those core mechanics needed to illustrate the above, and remember not to bog things down too much in detail. Now, as far as options go, you can come to class, stand up here and speak in person with slides or a video behind you, the public speaking approach that we've just been talking about. You can also submit a video or trailer pitch. If you want to pre-record your pitch, that's fine. In this post-COVID age, that's somewhat of an expectation. If you are online and you won't be coming in, pre-record your pitch. We do not want to be streaming pitches through Zoom and Discord, just so that we can keep things running smoothly, or as smoothly as possible. Pre-record it, I can collate them all, and then we can have everything running straight away as soon as we get in. Now, the option is up to you. Whatever is going to best communicate your idea, wherever you think your strong suit is. So we'll have a look at two examples. We have Kvetch, which was by Gavin O. Yeah, let's just play it.
Kvetch 2. So Kvetch is, in fact, a 2D side-scroller.
It's clear.
Done in pixel art. And rather than being a Mega Man clone where you shoot lemons, you, in fact, need to shoot the correct colored projectile at the enemy in the correct sequence. If you don't understand that, we're basically taking DDR, typing of the dead, and putting it into Mega Man. So note for programmers, we are using controllers only because keyboards just won't work for this. So here is what the UI will look like. It's pixel art. So how it works is basically that person who obviously looks like a main character is the main character, and that's an enemy. So above each enemy is a health bar with different colors in it, and you basically need to shoot it. So you basically shoot the correct color projectiles, destroy the shields, then you dash into it. Simple as that. Of course, so in terms of art, it's pixel art. I've got the main character down, and that's about it. And aside from that, we've got enemies. We've got bigger enemies, smaller enemies, enemies we have yet to draw, and maybe a cheeky boss or two if we've got time. So obviously we need goals. And the goals for this game are about 3 levels. One is basically a tutorial level that doesn't have a tutorial. A second level that sort of guides you throughout the level. And a third hard level that's hard. And of course, how much time do I have left, Tui? Cool, because where the bloody hell is it? Where is it? Where's the documents? Where's the list? I can't find it. Oh yes, here it is.
Pretty well.
Cool. Oh yeah. To make things easier for you, it is quite similar to the original first game, and we've got the code for dashing and stuff. It's all in Unity, but because of transferable skills, we sort of have a reference for you. So this makes it much easier for coding, FYI. So it works out perfectly for all of us. And that is Kvetch 2, everyone. Thank you.
Now, that was not perfect, but the idea comes across. Again, be prepared well in advance. This video should have been in the original presentation instead of navigating around the teaching station. And what often happens when students come up to the teaching station is they get lost. They don't know where they've put any of their files, and as soon as they have to switch out files, things get muddled and they lose time. So, both a good example as well as a prime example of some of the things not to do. But the communication is clear and the presentation material supported what they were saying. In an alternative approach, we have a trailer for insert game name, which remained titled that. But again, just an example. Alternatively, you can just have a video that's going to grab people's attention and communicate the idea. Both of these pictures were chosen. This is, yeah. This. No, but it ended up being quite different. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is what he runs. Again, hard for me to forget this one, but it got the audience invested, it got everyone laughing, everyone remembered it, and everyone wanted to sign on to build it. And I suppose feeding into your staff's ego sometimes plays out. So, voting. Again, selling the game to your peers. There will be a voting sheet released for those of you who have done the course before. It will be very similar. We will get all the games collated, all the games presented, and you will be able to vote for what you most want to work on and what you consider to be the best concept. Depending on how many pitches there are, chances are it'll be something like a 1 to 6, maybe a bit more than that. I doubt it'll be 1 to 10 as far as ranking goes, but as per usual, or as has often been the case in the past, those are the 2 categories. What are the games that you most want to work on, and what are the games you consider to be the best concept? They aren't necessarily always the same for each student. Some may consider, Billy's project to be the best concept, but they actually want to work on Newton's project. Now, as far as submission requirements for next Wednesday, we have the pitch. The pitches will be done during class time, so 11:30, once everyone is in, I will have everyone's content. Actually, I don't think there's a slide in here. I will send out a notice for those of you, well, for everyone. I will need your submission content the night before, or at least before class, so that I can get everything organized and we can run through everything smoothly. especially those of you using videos. I will need to get all of those beforehand. Now, the document itself will be due at the end of the day. That's 5 o'clock Wednesday. And it can be in either a PDF, Word doc, a Google Doc, or a PowerPoint. PowerPoint may seem an odd choice, but once upon a time, PowerPoint was the only thing that stored GIFs, so some students wanted to use it. As I've said before, distance students, whether international or domestic, pre-record your pitch and submit it to me before the actual class. Now, the grading of it. I only realized this morning that I hadn't actually released a sheet with the project brief. It is now on Blackboard, and you can have a look at all the detail. For the most part, the GDD, we want to know, do we understand the core concept? Do we understand the wider premise? Is the core gameplay clear? How well have you executed the document? Is it legible? Do not use black fonts on dark backgrounds. You'd be surprised how often that has happened. And do not put pictures behind your writing because it makes it harder to read. If you want to use images, put them to the side, lay things out so that everything remains legible. Those are outdated, those bottom two, so don't worry about them, and I will remove them. The pitch grading is done separately. We don't grade the pitch too harshly as long as you are here and you do your best to communicate your idea. There is a rubric, but it is really small. It's 5% of Project 1. Pitches are during class, but all final material submitted by 5 p.m. end of day. It will be submitted via Blackboard. We will let you know when that submission portal is open. It'll be closer to the end of the week for those of you who plan to finish early. With that said, are there any questions?
So this is next Wednesday, not this Wednesday. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, awesome.
Next Wednesday, August the 3rd should be the date, unless I've gotten that wrong. Okay, it looks and sounds like there are no questions. Simon, is there anything you want to add?